Good evening,
Good
Catherine
evening, Catherine.
Hine.
Hi.
How are you?
How are you? Good. Good. Good evening, Luciana Constantino. All right. Yeah, we've both had eventful weeks, I think, and we're
Very.
keeping on though. I was trying to find a good Bible verse to start us off with,
Here.
and
Yes.
as I tend to do, I tend to put God last, and I'm sorry I do that. I'm trying to get better. Um, But, I'm just praying for guidance as always, that we deliver some truth that touches somebody's heart and helps them toward greater freedom uh, and living a godly life and less suffering for them and their loved ones.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay. Before we get into this, I wanted to remind everybody that uh, of what we're trying to do on the broadcast, that we're always trying to be solution oriented. We do sometimes veer off into ain't it awful, and we got to expose this. Well,
Yeah.
you know if y'all don't
That's
get what's going on by now, you never will.
right.
Or if you're part of it and want to stay part of it, you've made your choice. Choices
Exactly.
can be unmade though, and
Yeah.
God is all forgiving,
Yeah.
uh, although we don't deserve it. So to summarize, what we see as the solution, based on God's directive to us, and in Genesis 1:26 to take dominion over His creation, we and then further explain that in 1 Samuel, I think, chapter 8. Um, we don't we don't put earthly authority over us. We do not take our disputes to the minions of Satan, and so he has provided in his word for a number of examples of alternatives to doing that, and going back to Exodus and the the assemblies that Moses conducted. So to summarize what we do, um, our process is based on the three notices that Yeshua talked about in Matthew, um, chapter uh, 18, I think, verses 15 through 18, or 15 through 17. Um, to first, this is how we're supposed to be guided in disputes with our fellow man. And every dispute we have is with our fellow man. It's not a dispute against a three-letter agency. It's not a dispute against a fictitious corporate entity. It's all disputes with other people. So, we do a three notice process. First, we try and resolve it with the man or woman, uh, by giving them a notice. You did this, you did that. This is how we'll make it right. And then we give them a second chance, and you have an opportunity to rebut our facts. And then the second notice says the same thing. Says basically, we served you with the first notice and you chose to ignore it. Maybe you had a good reason. We'll give you the benefit of the doubt. You have X number of days to respond. We always give them a specific number of days to respond, and we have specific facts that we put in our notice that they are invited to rebut as we present them. We present them under oath, and the way to rebut a statement under oath is with another statement under oath. For whatever reason, they choose to not do that. And we've done quite a few of them so far, and nobody
It,
rebuts anything. Go ahead.
Catherine, it's funny how you say for some reason they choose not to do that. We know what the reason is. They've committed some serious crimes, and they can't rebut the facts set before them, because there is no rebuttal there. They have committed these crimes.
Maybe they don't want to add perjury to their list by saying they didn't do what everybody knows they did do. So yeah, we do a second notice. We do a third notice, which is limited to, you ignored the first and the second notice. We are finding that around about the second notice, they start to express some concerns and they start doing some crazy stuff. Not necessarily, they don't provide a sufficient response. They don't rebut item by item, fact by fact, anything. And they certainly don't do it under oath.
Yeah.
But they start getting worried. They start reacting in some ways. But and we give them the benefit of the doubt there too. You reacted. You didn't provide a sufficient response, and we define what a sufficient response is in our notice.
And a sufficient response is not. This is not a thing.
Yeah.
How'd you like that one,
Catherine? It's full of crap. I don't agree.
This is not even a thing. How'd you like that one?
What was the last one you said?
How'd you like that one? The attorney that my ex-attorney who responded by saying, "This is not a thing."
This is not a thing. Yeah. Right.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Or, and we had this happen recently from a bar member writing to. This is the first time somebody actually directed a sort of a response to the correct man or woman, the one who had sent the letter. However, he indicated he did not understand how to write a business letter, and he had the address of the claimant's agent, but then he had somebody else's name as who he was directed the response to, and then it was really, the second paragraph was just. This sounds like sham legal process, okay, which is one of their corporate code.
It's how they live. It's what they do best. Sham legal process. So it's funny how they can use that term to describe something that we're doing.
That's a common thread that goes through almost everything they do psychologically. They project onto others what they themselves are doing.
Yeah.
And that's not just in that way, but in all kinds of ways.
Yeah.
So anyway, so there was that, which was also not responsive to the facts set out in the claim. So they'll be getting a third notice that will, give them another chance to get it right. And they will probably at that point give up, because that's what they usually do at that point. Now, the three notice process just by itself, without which any man or woman can do, can be effective without there being any backup by a common law court, by even after the man or woman has not rebutted the presumptions that he has created by signing various documents. Even when none of that is in place, sometimes the three notice process will work by itself. Sometimes it works after the first notice, but it's not a guarantee. I mean, nothing's a guarantee in this life. But the three, like anything, if you do it correctly and you do everything you know to do, you increase your chances of getting a just result that you can live with. Right. And nobody is trying to find the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. I don't believe there is one. you have to go into this with pure godly motives. You're trying to alleviate suffering. You're trying to achieve some kind of earthly justice, and that's it. If you're trying to seek truth. If you're going into it for some other motive, it will show up in your work, and you will not have success. Sometimes you will, you know, but for the most part, you will not. Now, if you do something beyond the three notice process, if you do before you do the three notice process, if you rebut some of the presumptions, at least, that your signature on the various documents that we all sign during our lives with the corporation, the voter registration documents uh, that gives them a presumption that, look, there's your signature. You support us. You support what we're doing. In fact, you're co-signer for our debts.
Right. The signature that you're forced to put on that line, or else.
If you want to vote, and of course,
or if you want to drive, and if you want to work.
Right. So now, even those, ideally, in your notices and part of your affidavits will explain what the other signatures mean, or the ones you have not rebutted. If they're still out there, and there are people that are too frightened of the IRS, to stop filing as taxpayers and claiming to be taxpayers, or they want a driver's license, or they want this, or they don't see any way around dealing with a corporation. Then explain that. Just explain that, that this is not out of any desire to support this criminal operation. It is only as a matter of duress, and because there's no workable alternatives that you can see. But to the degree that, nobody has to vote. So, and voting is one of the ways that your signature that you place on the voter registration is a big way that they get that, oh, you support us. And another one is all the times you're asked, are you a U.S. citizen? Well, United States, U.S. is a private for-profit corporation, or a multitude of corporations, and they change their names a lot. We have a listener that just sent me a list of 5 corporations doing business, just having the address 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. Only 2 of them have as the principal Joe Biden. So who knows what they're doing? But
we know what they're doing. They're doing the devil's work, Catherine. Let's just be honest about it.
Yeah,
they're doing the devil's work.
Mm-hmm. And it's meant to be confusing. So, I don't expect, and you shouldn't be disappointed, that you're not going to unravel all the intricacies of their deception games. They're not meant to be unraveled. As long as you recognize that the deception is there, like you said, Luciana, that's the important thing.
Yeah.
The devil is all about confusion and increasing it, and deception, of course. And another one of his tricks is, besides convincing you he doesn't exist, is telling us a lot of truth to mix in, to make that the medicine of that lie go down easier. Well,
right.
But he said all that true stuff. So this ought to be true also, because he said the other true stuff. There's a kind of a corollary to that we'll get to. But the solution that we have not, I know of no one, know of no one in no state republic that has implemented as full of a solution as I know that we're capable of doing without risking life or limb to do it. One would be, this would be a system having, where the members of the system, it takes about 50 people in a state republic. Maybe, 1 in 10,000. It takes everybody in the system should understand the 3-notice process and how it works and why it works. Each member should be willing to rebut the presumptions that they created themselves with their signatures and explain any signatures that are still out there. Because we're not perfectly sovereign. We're not perfectly free, obviously. So we need to have a system in which people understand that and they get as free as they are reasonably capable of getting. We're not perfect. We're human. Right. And these people have to form a common law court that will have at least 12 members so that if anybody ever asks for a trial by jury, not to be confused with a jury trial in the fake corporate tribunal system, that the common law court would be able to provide a trial. As we are currently doing this in Ohio, we don't take testimony. We don't need to. By the time we get a matter, the claimants have already done their 3-notice process to the point of default. Then they give them a 4th chance by filing a petition with us. And then, there's no need to have the taking of testimony because it's already admitted to. And multiple times. So in the event that there would be an actual dispute of what the facts are, you're going to need a common law petit jury, a jury of 12 or more. 12 seems to be a magic number. I hate to use that word, but it's a significant number. It's the number of apostles. It's the number of tribes of Israel. It comes up a lot, and going back to the Middle Ages, long before the United States of America was thought of, 12 was a significant number for a petit jury. Now, there's another jury. Don't get confused between the petit jury, which is the trial jury, and the grand jury. A common law grand jury, you can run a system with just a common law court. But to really have some power, you want to have a common law court and a common law grand jury. Now, traditionally, going back to the days of Magna Carta back in 1215, that was comprised of 25 people. For whatever reason, the fake corporate grand juries that are just lapdogs for the local corporate prosecutor, those don't have 25. And there's a reason for that. I don't know what it is, but I want to make sure. Sometimes they'll have 24, 23, 12, 18. But they don't have 25. Why is that? I don't know why. Unless they know that if they had 25, they would be lawful and they would be undertaking responsibilities, at least under Magna Carta, that they don't want to take on. Right. We're not afraid of those responsibilities. We'll take them on.
You mean because then they would be guilty of treason?
Yeah, maybe. Or they would be, I don't, honestly, I don't know. I don't know, but I think it just in my gut, it seems suspicious to me that they don't have they make a point. Every one of the 50 states, state of states, I'm talking about the 50 state corporations that are masquerading as state republics, None of them have corporate grand juries of 25. None of them.
Hmm. I
Don't know
think
why, but we ought to have that, and we ought to have about 4 or 5 alternates. And we can certainly run the pettit juries and the grand juries virtually, which is more and more what they are doing as well.
oh yeah.
But unlike them, in some instances, we identify our jurors. You go to our website, you see who our jurors, who are court members, who would ultimately be pettit jurors if they were ever needed, who they are. You can see how they rebutted the presumptions that their
Right.
signatures had made. We're totally
Right.
transparent.
Yeah, they
You
never
don't have
have. They'll never give you a list of who those people were on the grand jury who decided to indict you. There's no. They won't give you a recording of what happened that day. How do we even know there was even a grand jury present? How do we even know that day even occurred? We're just people just take them by their word. Oh, there was a grand jury and they listened to this evidence that we're not going to tell you we gave them. We're not going to tell you what we told them, but what we told them made them indict you. Really?
right.
Well, did that ever happen? I don't know.
And that's their proceedings are secret,
Yeah.
and I think, and there is some to give the devil his due. You know, there is some history going back to Magna Carta days of secrecy in grand jury proceedings, but there is also a history of having open proceedings, and I prefer open. And I think most Americans feel that way, that there's something wrong if you have to engage in secrecy. Um,
Exactly.
JFK told us, Americans don't like secret deals, secret handshakes, the secret societies.
Secret
And
clubs. Secret
yeah,
clubs.
so I believe that when we do form our common law grand jury in Ohio, and I hope that we will be accompanied by people doing it in their way in other states, in other state republics, that we all have 25 on the grand jury, and that the grand jurors all know that they are the judges of the facts and the law. No, no black robed wonder can tell them what the law is. That is not his job. Um, and no prosecutor can tell them what the law is, and they certainly can't tell them what the facts are. But they do it in their fake proceedings. Okay, so that's basically what you have with a system that can work. We have never achieved that yet, as far as I know, in any of the state republics of America. And there, you see sprouting up a few attempts here and there at a grand jury. A lot of those I would be skeptical of, because the people have not rebutted the presumptions their signatures created. A lot of them don't even live in the state republic that they're supposed to be a grand juror of. And there's a long tradition, at least, of each state republic being a sovereign nation. And I think that keeps the process manageable. That I think is premature for us to be talking about, let's restore the republic. What are we restoring exactly? Which republic? Every single one of the states was always considered its own sovereign nation. If we're going to restore anything in government that ever was before, I think we ought to look at that. But restore the best of it, and not maybe what it really was even then, which we may be having to guess at. Another reason to have a grand jury and some people disagree about the need for it, is so oftentimes the perpetrators, the respondents in the three notice process, are acting as legal fiction persons. And that has a special meaning in their statutes that it's a legal fiction. It's like Harrison Ford is a man. Indiana Jones is a character that Harrison Ford played in various films. That's what the difference is between being a man and being a character. And when you're agreeing to be a person, you're agreeing to be a fictitious character. And the lines of of separation seems to have gotten blurred for a lot of people who are addicted to television, and they get all involved in the plots of these various, I don't know, soap operas, and in the Spanish speaking world, the telenovelas, and the and TV series. And who shot JR? Remember that in Dallas? There were a lot of people, magazines would address, well, who do you think it was? Who cares?
Oh my God. They really got people wrapped up with that one, didn't they?
Oh, yeah, yeah. And, it still seems to be going on. And now that people are a little more sophisticated, they've got other dramas to replace the sitcoms and the TV series that we used to be addicted to, and couldn't quite tell the difference between that and reality.
Catherine, if I can just interject for a moment here. You were talking about the number 25, and that they never have 25 in their grand juries. In the Bible, I found that instead of using the number 25, they'll say 5 and 20, 5 and 20. I think we need to look more
into God. I did not know that.
I think we need to look more into God's word and into 5 and 20, because I think there's something that we're going to find out in there. Maybe we'll do the next show on some of that.
Yeah, I'd like to see the context of that reference to 5 and 20. Yeah, that would be very significant. Mm-hmm. For one thing, if you have an odd number, you know that you're going to have a clear majority. You're not going to have, like in a petit jury, I mean, you could have 6 and 6, so you could have a stalemate, but the verdicts are supposed to be unanimous anyway in the trial jury.
Right. And it's still, it's got to baffle people that one of the only courts that doesn't have any jury at all is a juvenile court, where you are going to be you're looking at being deprived at the most precious thing in the world, your child. More precious than gold, more precious than your home, more precious than anything. And for that, there's no jury because they said so. I wonder why.
Right. And also, even in the general division in Ohio, in divorce court, there's no right to a jury trial there either, as to custody, as to even the property division issues. And, that can get to be serious too, if you're talking about depriving somebody of their property, their land.
Right.
The problem is if they were to give a general right to jury trial, it tends to give them a focus that or a deadline. That we have to give you a jury trial within X number of days, and if you ask for one in Ohio, I had asked for one back when I was still duped by that the system was real. this was in like 2016, 17, something like that. I paid $600 for the right to get a jury trial. Yeah.
Wow.
And then after the jury heard all the evidence and was, yeah, at the conclusion of everything, and this was just a debt case. It was a credit card case.
Yeah.
At the end of the case, the so-called judge dismissed everybody. He granted a directed verdict, which in their system says, well, you know what? We don't really need you after all. Thanks for your service, for which I paid $600. Thanks for your service, but we don't need your opinion in this case because reasonable minds could not disagree as to what the outcome should be. Well, isn't it interesting? Because on appeal, the appeal fake tribunal said, yeah, reasonable minds could disagree about what the outcome could be. Go back and do it over again. But fortunately, by that point, I had figured things out. And at that point, all I had to do was mention, it's not really clear about jurisdiction here because, the fake trial judge, the fake tribunal has this Dun & Bradstreet number of blah, 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 blah. I looked it up. And so does this appeal court, so-called. And that's the trial judge resigned at that point. He actually,
Really?
He didn't resign. He retired. Wow. Scott Nussbaum. Yeah. And anyway, I never heard anything more about it. And this was, a very hotly pursued matter over very, very little in controversy. Very little. Yeah, Keith commented that a judge vacated the jury verdict, and this was 1987. There's two ways that they can trash a jury, even one of their fake corporate juries. They can grant a directed verdict. Reasonable men could not disagree as to what the outcome should be, so I'll dismiss the jury and just enter that finding myself. The other way is when the jury.
Wait, Catherine, do they return your $600?
No. They had other pretexts that, I owed more than that. And,
of course.
So, right.
Of course.
But the other way, in response to Keith, is, and to mention his example, is called a judgment NOV, a judgment notwithstanding the verdict. And that's where the Black Robe Wonder allows the jurors to make a decision, and then it's like, oh no, they made the wrong decision, so I got to vacate that decision.
It still floors me to this day that they get away with this. Jesus, what is wrong with us that we've allowed this to go on for so long?
Right. Yeah. Even their fake jury trial is an illusion. It's an illusion. Look at your civil rules. They make it clear it's an illusion. Well, I mean, it's not that clear. I mean, there's a lot of crap to wade through to find that out.
And they do that on purpose?
Yeah. Well, they want to keep control at all times of the result.
Catherine, I'm trying to think if I've ever witnessed a speedy trial. I mean, I've never seen a trial to be speedy.
No, they're usually not. Now, you don't really have a right in their system to speedy trial in a civil matter. And they make sure of that because in their civil rules, they've got, I think it's rules like 26, 27, 28, something like that. Discovery can go on a long time. Interrogatories, requests for production of documents, and there's another one, depositions. And that's so that, we don't want to have a trial by ambush. we have to discover each other's cases. We have to discover what the evidence is on either side. They don't have that so much in criminal cases, where it might be more important. But in civil cases, they do, and the discovery process itself can go on for years and years and years, and there can be disputes about, am I entitled to this information from my opponent or am I not? Let's see what the appeal court says. So we go up to the appeal court, and then we go back down to the trial court, and then we have another disagreement. We go up to the appeal court and back down. That can keep on for for years. Yeah, ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. Not only the attorney's fees, but the court registry investment system fees, among others. Now, it's in criminal cases that that you are entitled, supposedly, to a speedy trial, and I think that's in one of the first 10 amendments to the 1787 Constitution, that you are entitled to a speedy trial. Well, what does that mean? How speedy does it have to be? And
do they ever outline that in any of their statutes, codes, rules? Do they ever outline what?
Oh, they do. They have certain rules, and I think it's like, if the defendant, not the man or woman, of course, this all applies to persons. If the defendant is in custody, then there has to be a trial. I think in Ohio, at least at one time, that trial has to happen within 30 days. Now, except now, if the defendant has filed some motions that still have to be resolved, then we have to take the time to resolve those motions, and that doesn't count in the 30 days, see. So, and one of the first things a criminal defense attorney, especially the court-appointed ones, do is file a discovery request. And I take back what I said before. There is discovery in the criminal law side of it, and so that's going to take some time. Well, if the defense asks for it first, then that counts. That counts as as time that the defendant doesn't get back. That doesn't count toward his right to speedy trial. That doesn't count against the 30 days.
Why does it sound like a football game or something?
Yeah, it is.
It does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. To them, it's a game.
Yep.
And I don't know, when I always just liked discovery, because for the most part, everybody already knew what the facts were, and maybe not everything, but it was more important to get the thing done, and not create what's called, there are law review articles written on satellite litigation, which usually means
what was it called again?
Satellite litigation.
Satellite.
Mm-hmm.
What is that?
And well, satellite revolves around the planet or whatever. So if the trial process is the planet, the satellite litigation is it goes around and around and around, and that usually means related matters that you have to get through before you can get a trial in the case in the main litigation. So it's sort of an auxiliary litigation, and that in itself can go up to appeal and back and up and back.
Oh, how fun.
Yeah.
They just keep it coming through those doors, coming through those doors, coming through those doors.
Yeah. So, but and it can get very testy too. You can, and in this debt case I'm referring you to, there was about $10,000 in controversy in the main litigation. However, And the satellite litigation about the discovery, oh my gosh, there was like close to $90,000 in
Wow.
extra attorney fees
Oh, yeah.
involved with. We had to go to all this trouble with our staff to pry information from the recalcitrant other party, and we're entitled to this.
Yeah.
And not to mention our appeal fees and our time and our effort. And we had to, we had to go rent a motel room. This was an attorney in Columbus going down to Chillicothe. He had to rent a hotel room. He wanted that too for a deposition, I think.
Nice.
Yeah. So anyway, everybody's got their own horror stories, and I didn't want to get off into the thing that I'm trying to tell people not to be so worried about, and that is how awful it is. Yes, it is awful. And I guess I was going to get into, how awful it is in the trial process, because just today I heard from somebody that I think, usually knows better, who thought, well, gee, maybe if we took our common law judgment into federal district court, what? You want Satan to approve your godly process.
Right.
Yeah. No. And I said, well, you do what you want, but I'm not going to be part of it.
Right.
Anyway, so back to the things that people who are watching this broadcast and are wanting to get themselves free, particularly of the stranglehold that the corporate legal system, they think, has on them, need to understand that a lot of that stranglehold is an illusion that we are buying into ourselves. And one of the things I don't want to do, besides playing Ain't It Awful, is and why Ain't It Awful is not just, well, isn't that important to tell people how awful it is? That we need to expose it. Expose. What does that do? Lead to a feeling of resistance is futile.
And how much more exposing do they need? This has been decades and decades and decades and decades. I mean, do they not have eyes to see, or do they not have internet? Because it's been around for a long time. And all this crime is out there. This crime happening in their so-called courts.
And it gets worse. It's worse than just playing Ain't It Awful and therefore resistance is futile. There's and I'll call him out, and he sort of does good work, and he says he's a Christian. He sometimes cites some Bible verse. And he's got a call called A Call for an Uprising. What does that sound like? It sounds to me like it's inviting people to endanger themselves by and get themselves labeled insurrectionists, like the J6ers did. The one, for those who may not remember, these were the ones that were protesting the fake corporate election results in what was that, 2020, 22, wasn't it? 21. It was in in the early 2021. Right. Yeah. And which, that in itself, the foolishness of that as a strategy, could be a whole broadcast in itself, and we can talk about that. For one thing, if you're going to put out an effort to fight for your freedom, to put some effort into gaining freedom, you want to know that you're fighting the right fight. You don't want to waste your time fighting the wrong fight, fighting the wrong enemy, and becoming outraged at the deceptiveness of the corporate players when they have their elections, because after all, their elections are about them and the offices that they're going to have in their criminal operation. What do we care about what they do? What do we care about the outcome of the gangland, operations between the Bonanos and the Genoveses, really? Does that matter to us? Should we stick our necks out because of that? I don't think we should, particularly not when we know we go there, we go in where the enemy is strongest, where we're most knowledgeable, and we're the weakest and least knowledgeable. That doesn't even make sense. There's no upside to it, but there's plenty of downside to it. So, and you might ask yourself if all the exposing of the corruption really helped us, why does the corporate media kind of tolerate it? Yeah, there's some token censorship here or there, but when we're talking about real solutions, there's a lot more. There's a lot more censorship, as Luciana and I have both experienced in our emails, phone calls, etc.
It's never ending. It just grows and grows.
But you figure if they had everything all covered, what the heck do they care about examining minutely everything we do and everything we say and everything we think? If it didn't matter,
is the word. I mean, they are on everything we are talking about, everything we are listening to, everyone we are talking to, emailing. They just have their nose in all of it. We're so interesting to them, Catherine.
Well, they want to know what we're up to, because it must make a difference to them. We must not be as powerless as they keep telling us we are.
Right.
But
they're wasting a lot of time on us.
Yeah. But it's worse than that, or it's not as bad. I should say it's not as bad as that, because they might be, intimately involved, or they think they are, in what we think and feel and plan. But aren't we there in everything they do also? We the people are running this crime operation, aren't they? And sometimes those people who are part of it develop a conscience and come out and tell what the truth is.
That's what I pray for all the time. I know they're listening every time. I know there's proof. They're watching. There's proof. They're listening. There's proof. They're following, and they're there and there and there. And my prayer is, I hope that this whole hour that they've been listening, or this whole time that they've been watching, or listening to us on the phone, watching what we're doing online or whatever, I just hope there's one that says, wait a minute, what? And repent.
And there are. They're coming to the woodwork. They are.
I'm just hoping a few will repent and be saved from this madness, and to be honest, not burn in hell for eternity.
Right. And some people, like we say, at the title of the broadcast, sincerely were ignorant, because we know that there's a conscious corporate policy to compartmentalize information. I've seen policies with the corporate electric company where they don't want their installers to know about the complaints about the smart meters, and they compartmentalize. Your job is this, and it's not that, and their job is that, and not this, and don't talk to each other about that. So it's a kind of a pathetic effort to control the narrative, of course, and people being who they are, they're going to share information. If only they're going to share information, if only with each other. And people are naturally curious, And they're naturally going to want to know, what is this? Why are we doing this? What do you see over in your department?
Well,
And
Catherine, if I could stop you there for 1 second. When we're finished on the show, if you don't mind, I want to end the show leaving just a 10-minute video of some. Hold on, just let me mute this because I have an echo. A 10-minute video of a rally that happened yesterday in Parma, Ohio, for a beautiful girl by the name of Dawn Pasella, and I think you know the story. Uh,
Mhm.
and for those who don't know, uh, she was only 23 years old, worked for the prosecutor's office, found out that the prosecutors uh, in Cuyahoga County, Parma, Cuyahoga County, were screwing over a bunch of defendants and sending people to jail for crimes they never committed. She worked for the prosecutor's office, found this information, and one gentleman that was in jail, he did 10 years in prison. The prosecutor knew he was, hold on, the prosecution, they knew the man was innocent. His name's Tony Viola, yet they let him sit and rot in jail. And I'll let them explain it. And I don't agree with filing in their system and the way they're going about it, but everybody's going to do what they're going to do. But the reason I want to show it is to show, because you were just talking about, there's going to be someone in there that says, what's going on here and whatnot. Well, that somebody was Dawn Pasella, and she was just 23 years old. And she worked for them. Hold on.
Versus Maryland decision that the prosecutor has an obligation to turn over exculpatory information
But they
to the
don't.
defense.
They
But they
don't.
don't.
And they
But they
really
always,
don't here in Ohio.
they really, the whole notion of the prosecutor is going to turn over exculpatory evidence, that's a totally unenforceable ruling. It's totally unenforceable because the prosecutors always say, well, gee, it didn't seem exculpatory to me.
Of course.
That's how they get around it. And they
Well,
know that they're going to get around it that way. That's why
yeah.
they created it that way.
So the reason I want to play this at the end of the show is because I want people to see what happens when somebody who
But we could do
works.
it right now. We could do it right now just to show.
I think people need. Okay, we will do it because I just want people to understand what happens when you work in their system and then a light bulb comes on and you're like, wait a minute, this isn't right, and you go to fix it. You know what happens? You end up dead. And guess what? The criminals who are part of this corrupt system, they won't investigate your murder. They'll protect each other and cover up these crimes. It's disgusting. Do you want me to play it, Catherine?
Yeah. Before you do, I just want people to understand that maybe this is not to disrespect the victim at all, but maybe if she had had a fuller appreciation of the degree of criminality that these people were, not just the ones that in the office she worked in, but if she had understood how global this
Yeah,
was,
she
she
was
might have
very
just walked out instead of trying to do what she did. Okay, go ahead and play it.
yeah. And thinking back, it would have been great if she would have walked away, but walked away with the information she had. But they had they had threatened her. They had threatened her, scared her to death. She felt like she had to do what she was told by them. But then she had a little voice inside of her telling her, wait a minute, you've got to help this guy in prison. You can't let him sit there.
So what she did was she did not blow the whistle publicly. She disclosed it to the
She,
defense.
yes,
Okay,
to Tony Viola himself in prison. All the
right.
information she found that the prosecutor was
I
hiding.
think that this is a tip for whistleblowers. Shout it from the housetops. Don't just quietly leak it to somebody who needs
Right,
to know.
right. if
Get
the
to the
world,
housetops, you
yeah,
will be safer.
if she, I mean, my heart just breaks for this girl, Dawn Pasella, and what a strong person to step out and help someone like Tony, like she did. And unfortunately, she ended up dead. And the Parma police and the prosecutor, nobody will investigate this for what it is. But I'll just play it only. And this just happened yesterday. So I'll go ahead and play that. Hold on one second.
Okay.
Can you see that, Catherine?
Oh, let me get to the right screen and maybe I will.
Okay, I hope you can hear it.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
I can see it.
My name is Tony Viola, and I want to thank each and every one of you for being here. I knew that Dawn would be impressed, actually, and appreciate the fact that you guys came out here on a rainy, cold afternoon. After you hear a few of us chat, we're going across the way to Antonio's for a slice of pizza and some appetizers. Please join us. If you got somewhere else to go and you just want to grab a plate to go, that's
how you get people to come to your events. Food.
I don't know what I did.
Okay, was there more to
and
it?
I would be in jail right now if it wasn't for Dawn. And I want to explain the intersection of my life, how my life intersected with Dawn. But to understand that, we got to understand how we prosecute people here in Cuyahoga County, okay? My real estate company was raided. The government said I stole $46 million from a mortgage company, but I didn't own a mortgage company. I owned a real estate company. So in law enforcement, the lack of evidence is evidence. Well, he must be guilty. There's no evidence. It's crazy. So we wanted to go to the prosecutor's office, explain. They don't want to hear it. We don't want to see your tax returns. We don't want to hear anything. You're a criminal and you know it. And so I was indicted in federal and state court simultaneously. This is rare. Like a terrorist gets this treatment. And me, Tony, no criminal history. Nobody was mad at me. And all of a sudden, live breaking news, guns, raids, nation's largest mortgage fraud case, okay? Prosecuted in federal and state court at the same time. What happens when the government starts realizing that I didn't own the mortgage company and I didn't steal $46 million? Do they leave us alone, dismiss the case? Sorry, Tony. No. Let me tell you how prosecutors Dan Casares and Mark Bennett work. Let me tell you what they do. They start destroying computers that were seized in televised raids, okay? They start suppressing evidence that proves not just my innocence, but 1,000 other people that this task force was prosecuting. They started threatening witnesses. I got a pile of witness statements on my website. You could wallpaper Parma City Hall with affidavits from people like Nick Miles and Angelica Fry and Sarah Swartz that said, I went down and told Mark Bennett, and I went down and told Dan Casares you were innocent, and you didn't have anything to do with mortgages. And they told me if I say that again, I'm going to be indicted. Nick Miles was told if he doesn't lie in federal court, they're going to indict his wife and take his kids and put them in foster care that very night. Dan Casares said the grand jury's in session now. I'll go and I'll get an indictment. Okay? These are powerful government officials acting on your behalf of the public, telling people to lie in state and federal court. Now, in my case, the FBI in Cleveland says they don't know about their own evidence. Forget hiding evidence. They're saying, read it on my website, that they didn't even know about their own records. Well, let me tell you, if prosecutors can't track what's in their own computer system, don't prosecute anybody until you figure that out first, okay? So I refuse to plead guilty. So what did Mark Bennett and Dan Casares do? After they destroyed all this evidence and manufactured statements from people, they still couldn't get me to plead guilty. So they thought it would be a really good idea to have Dawn Pasella, the office manager of a multi-jurisdictional task force. They thought it would be a good idea to have Dawn, who at the time was 23 years old, that it would be a really good idea to have Dawn wearing a wire and invading into my trial strategy preparation, okay? to record what Tony and Tony's lawyer is saying about trial preparation, to donate money towards Tony's legal fees so the government could use her canceled check and start tracking our law firm's bank statement. This is illegal. I'm not allowed to bug the prosecutor's office before trial. Well, I'd love to hear what they're saying in that conference room. I think I'll bug the prop, but they did it to me. And so far, nobody thinks that's a problem either. It's absolutely unbelievable. Let me tell you something. All this stuff that was going on bothered Dawn. She was idealistic. She was brilliant. She didn't take what people said as gospel. She liked to decide for herself. And so she was so smart that she's looking at some of the documents inside the prosecutor's office and saying, wait a minute, the stuff I'm reading doesn't match what we're saying on TV. So she started questioning. She was ordered to wear a wire, told she would lose her job if she didn't. Then she's seeing not just me, but almost 1,000 innocent people being prosecuted on this ridiculous theory that realtors actually own mortgage companies and somehow were responsible when banks make zany loans. Even though as a realtor, we have nothing to do with the bank loans. So she said, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. And she changed my life. She called me one day and said, Tony, you need to know what's going on inside the prosecutor's office. And she tells me, I couldn't even believe this. I was so angry. How could the government, how could the prosecutors treat somebody like this? I wouldn't ask the ladies in my office to give me a cup of coffee. And yet these powerful men put this young lady in a situation to be wearing a wire and pretending she was some criminal justice graduate student working with defense lawyers, actually recording what we're saying about her trial preparation. So she said it was too much. She couldn't deal with it. It was wrong. And she switched sides and helped me. So the brilliant young lady that helped the prosecutors prepare for the first trial, okay, that I lost, helps me prepare for my second trial that I won. And the brilliance of Dawn, it is clear in how we prepared for the second trial. She said, Tony, I don't like to be told what to think. Show me the facts, I'll make my own decision. And she said, we're going to tell the jurors the same thing. We're going to prove innocence. Forget reasonable doubt, maybe he's guilty, maybe not. We can actually establish innocence with documents. So all of a sudden, we possess documents that the government thought they destroyed or didn't exist. So during the second trial, where I was in prison, and I'm doing this trial, after Dawn helped me prepare, the government figures out, wait a minute, how does this guy have all this evidence that we said didn't exist? FBI interviews, documents for banks that they signed off on all these loans that I supposedly tricked them into making, the fact that I never got any money from companies I don't own. So they started threatening Dawn, and they went to Ed and Karen's house too, threaten them. That's what we do. That's what prosecutors do. We threaten people, okay? Not seeking the truth, threatening. Dawn was a threat to them because she didn't want to be a part of misconduct and innocent people going to jail. So she planned on testifying. I know she did because she gave me questions to ask her. I know she was planning on coming to court. She's found dead in her apartment, and right from the beginning, this was suspicious. Right from the beginning. How many cell phones were found in Dawn's apartment? She lived alone. 1, no. 2, no. 3. 3 cell phones, okay? 1 had an outbound phone call hours after she supposedly passed away. Somebody was in that apartment. There's 2 cups of coffee, now 1. You ever make yourself 2 cups of coffee if you're by yourself? I don't think so. So it was suspicious from the beginning. This 0.59 alcohol content, okay, the heat cranked up in the apartment to accelerate rigor mortis. And Parma and Dan Caceres, they got like a direct line, okay? Because Dawn's found dead and Dan Caceres knows about it instantly and tells the judge the next day that Dawn's found dead. They haul me into court. The judge is white as a ghost. The court reporter's in tears. Dan Caceres doesn't seem to be too upset about any of this. She's dead. Let's just move on. The computer in Dawn's apartment was missing. We have now a statement from a guy named Don Cleland, who ran the task force, who said Dawn was given hard drives, all the evidence in federal and state cases. Why on earth would these people put Dawn in that position of having all this evidence? You got 1,000 people going to prison. She's 23, 24, 25 years old, wearing a wire. Here, take all the evidence home. At the funeral home, People were concerned the way Dawn looked. Was there a struggle? Her face didn't look natural. And what did Park police do? What did they do when they showed up at her apartment? God forbid, and found her like that. Did we call an ambulance? No, we called a mortuary service. They had the embalmers on the ready, standing by. This is the most outrageous misconduct by powerful people because they don't feel like admitting they're wrong. So I've had just about enough of this. And let me tell you, for a long time, this was a lonely struggle. Okay, now I see all these folks out there, and I'm grateful to all the journalists and podcasters and people who are concerned about this coming forward and covering this. We are so fortunate to have Yale Law School. Yale, it's a miracle. And I was in jail for 10 years. You dream.
Always do
Okay,
they.
I'm sorry. I didn't want to continue because I don't want to praise any of these attorneys because
Right,
we
yeah.
already know what's going on.
Yeah, you sometimes get this from the Innocence Project too, and not that they haven't done good work, and they've gotten I think about 150 people wrongly convicted out, oftentimes after decades and decades of
30,
yeah,
40 years. Here's the
yes,
problem. Once they get them freed, once they get them out, sure, once in a blue moon, these people get paid, but that doesn't make up for all the decades they lost with their child, all the decades they lost with their family, all the decades of abuse and horror and nightmares that they had to live through in prison. Here's the thing. Here's the thing, Catherine. The Innocence Project and this Yale University, whoever they exonerate, whoever they free, do you ever see the prosecutor who put them in there knowing they were innocent? Have you ever seen justice where now that would be justice? How about we
sometimes they will resign, they will move, they might get a suspension.
Catherine, they need to switch places. That's the only way. Let out the innocent and put in the prosecutor who put him in there knowing he was innocent and just wanted to win. Let's do that.
Well, we could do that. We could do that. The only way that could happen is
the Innocence Project doing that.
Even if they wanted to, there's really the system is not set up to make that even possible. It wouldn't even be possible.
I don't even see them trying. I don't see any of them trying.
No, they don't try because it's uphill just to prove innocence, which you're not supposed to have to prove, which goes to show that's one of their presumptions, the presumption of guilt. I know I was reprimanded in front of a jury once for during voir dire, asking them if they would be able to accept that my client was presumed innocent. Oh, you can't tell them that. I just got ripped up one side and down the other. I will tell them what the law is. So he definitely gave them the impression that the presumption was of guilt because I must have been wrong for saying there was a presumption of innocence. Wow. Which is, the whole foundation of Anglo-American law. But, yeah. But it could be, what this prosecutor did, or a group of them did, was they committed the common law offense of false imprisonment, and that can be addressed and should be addressed. And whether or not a common law grand jury could also investigate whether there's probable cause to believe that Don Pasella was murdered and that certain people probably did commit the murder or at least, and committing a murder doesn't have to mean that you were there. Ordering a hit is the equivalent, it's aiding and abetting. being an accessory before the fact, after the fact, any participation at all. Don't they all constantly tell us?
Such as those who did not investigate and still choose not to investigate, and did not investigate a lot of the facts at the scene in order to cover up for their buddies involved in the same
That's evidence of
organized crime that they're involved in.
And that would be up to a true common law grand jury to investigate. And so far, people don't care enough to form a common law grand jury. I would be happy to help people form a common law grand jury in Ohio to investigate the murder of the murder of Dawn and the false imprisonment of Tony. There were a number of fake statutes that were also violated. I don't care about that. I'm concerned with the common law crimes that are committed, and the people are ultimately the judges of that law and those facts. So, if anybody develops a backbone between now and whenever, I'd be happy to help them form such a common law grand jury. We have a common law court that if and when certain people were they issued a true bill against certain people as perpetrators, we could certainly decide on guilt or innocence in our Ohio Circuit Court of Record. So for that to happen in the existing system, and I know that that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, I'm afraid we veered a little bit into Ain't It Awful, but there's also a solution. There is a solution, and people are going to want to say, yeah, but then what? Then what do you do? Well, what are we going to do now? We don't have a finding of guilt now. Let's get closer to a solution, shall we? Now, there's been a lot of attempts to sabotage and discredit common law, which is the only law that the Constitution ever refers to when it refers to law. So, watch what you're disparaging. If you're listening to certain people online, most of them will not talk about a solution, but there are some that do. First of all, when you're listening to anybody, me, anybody on the internet, any law review article, any newspaper you're reading, there's a psychological concept known as the Gell-Mann, G-E-L-L, man effect, or Gell-Mann amnesia. And that's the concept where you're reading an article and it's about something you know a lot about, and you're reading through it, and the first paragraph it's like they got the facts wrong. They got everything they're saying is wrong and makes no sense. And you know that because it's what you do for a living, and you know they're wrong. Then you turn the page and you go to another topic that you don't know about, and you check that to the back of your brain, what you just learned about the author, and you assume that what they're talking about in the other context, say they're talking about some Israeli, Iraqi, or Israeli Palestinian conflict, and you don't know anything about that, you'll assume that they're right about that. They're wrong about the other stuff on the first page, but on the second page, they suddenly develop some intelligence and discretion. But people do that. I've done that. I suggest to you that if they're wrong in one thing, they're probably wrong in other things. So watch yourself that you don't do that. Now, they might be, wrong in some areas and right in other areas, but don't just assume that they are, because the areas that they're talking about you don't know about yet. Now, there's in deciding what you're going to do about this problem we've got in the world with the people supposedly in charge intending to harm us and harming us every day in every way they can imagine.
Every day in every way, and more as each day passes. More people are suffering. More people like Tony Viola, more people like Don Pasella, more people like, there's just too many to name.
All right. So instead of, focusing on the problem, let's focus on the solution, because the problem is always caused by other people. And we're people, we can form people's courts and we can address the solutions. So keep that in mind for when you look at someone, the rare few that you do see online that do talk about solutions, and some of them talk about common law solutions, or at least they say they're talking about common law solutions. But what exactly are they telling you to do? A lot of the time they're telling you to file this, file that, file in their court. They call these fake tribunals courts. They're not courts. They don't meet their own definition of being a court. They tell you to fill out the corporation's forms. Well, when you do that, you're entering into a contract with them. When you form a business and you don't do the business in your own name, you do the business in the corporate name, you're wrong two ways. First of all, by forming, let's say, an LLC, you are submitting yourself to the corporate Secretary of State. Certainly you are in Ohio, and I think in most states, and their rules. So you're subjugating yourself once again to corporate powers, and you're also, by being incorporated yourself, because that's probably what some attorney told you to do, you have to incorporate. I know I was told that. I have a rental property business. I was told you should incorporate. Somebody might slip and fall and they'll sue you for $1 million and you'll lose everything. Yeah, I'll take my chances. But I fell for it at first, but not anymore. I operate in my own name and with a private membership common law association. So I'm not operating as a corporation. But if you are operating as a corporation, you're telling the world, I might harm you, but I won't have any personal liability. How is that ever going to be a godly process? It's not. And people don't want to hear that because they want to protect themselves. Why don't you let the truth protect you? Why don't you let the fact that you're not harming people protect you? If you are harming people in your business, maybe you should stop. Maybe you should compensate the people you're harming. So that those are factors that go into the openness of your mind when you're looking at what solutions are offered out there. And there's a number of people that are offering fake solutions, and I can mention them. There's organizations that do this. One of them is, and I don't know if they're still I think they're still in business. National Liberty Alliance. Sounds good, doesn't it? They file routinely into the fake tribunals. Now they're using some sort of a counterclaim process, and they're saying, well, it's not really dealing with the devil. Really? It's not. And another way you recognize if you're on the wrong track when you start listening to somebody who tells you they're giving you a lawful common law solution is they're constantly demanding money from you. They got to have money to keep running. There's one that's pretty well discredited now, but I thought I'd mention her, Anna von Reitz, in American States Assembly. There's plenty of proof out there that she has acted as an agent for the Vatican, insists on calling people American nationals. Well, what's a national? In the corporate statutes, a national is the same thing as a legal fiction person. It's just another legal fiction. And if you let yourself be identified by one of the cabal's words for you, you're going to carry all the garbage that goes with that definition. Stop doing that. You're shooting yourself in the foot, or worse. Then there's another organization I kind of liked for a while, national-assembly.net. One of the criteria for membership is you have to swear that you rebuke Anna von Reitz. I'm telling you that.
What? Which one was that, Catherine?
National-assembly.net. Okay. It's on their homepage. You have
I haven't run across that one yet. Okay.
Yeah, you have to swear that you will never, and you never have, listened to Anna von Reitz, not even to rebuke her. You must have no history with Anna von Reitz. You must have never listened to her. Okay. Anyway, they do not operate courts. They do not operate grand juries, as far as I know. They have conference calls, and a lot of places have conference calls and conference calls and conference calls.
I was just going to say, and the conference calls go on and on and on.
Yeah. And it usually ends up, being some kind of nitpicky, dispute between two or three of the people and who are off on ego trips of their own. There's a gal that made a few inroads for a while in Ohio, and I think she's still, I don't know, she's got an organization called Lawful America. Her name is Michelle Walker. That's spelled Michael, like Michael would be, with an E at the end. Michelle Walker. And like National Liberty Alliance, like American States Assembly, Lawful America, and this is one of the ways you recognize them. They got a top-down plan. We got a plan, and you got to do this, this, and this, and everybody's got to do it exactly the same way, and we're going to do it in all 50 states, and we're going to make a lot of money. So one of the things that Michelle Walker talks about is that she takes some kind of authority from the Nuremberg trials, and she's not the only one who has done that. For those of you who don't know what the Nuremberg trials were, they were show trials that the victors in World War II put on to convince the world. Remember, every time you put on a trial, you're putting on a show. You're putting on a show for the community. This goes back to Greek morality plays, and trials have always been displays of why you're entitled to what the justice that you're asking for. And that's what the first Nuremberg was. But it was controlled by United States attorneys, and some people were executed. Some of the medical people, I think a few of the nurses were executed. I don't think any of the doctors who committed acts of torture, probably mild by today's standards, none of them were given they might have been given light prison sentences. nobody suffered the death penalty for the death penalty they had imposed on many in the camps. There's another hallmark, and I don't want to just call certain people out, but there's a number of organizations that address human trafficking, that address the predatory probate, as we've discussed with the Roger Hilligus case. But there's a bunch of other cases like his case, and they follow the same blueprint, really. And there's a number of organizations that purport to help them, but they don't help. They're full of advocates who like being advocates, and if this problem would ever be solved, they couldn't be advocates anymore, could they? In any case, one of the hallmarks that, and I'll go through these pretty fast, and that is that you can see that they ignore the fact that that what we have is a republic. You see that a lot in some of these cultural icon people, like Trump, like Tucker Carlson, like Jordan Peterson. They never talk about that we were promised a republic early on. You know, our ancestors back in the early days of the after the Declaration of Independence. They talk about our democracy, 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 democracy. And I've been on about this before, but I'll go into it again. What's a republic? A republic is the same thing as government by consent. That's all it is. And what does consent mean? It means consent by everybody. Everybody. If you don't have consent by everybody, you don't have a republic. If you have to cram your government down somebody's throat, that's not a republic. If you have a mob rule democracy, like the Mockingbird media keeps telling us that we have, then that means that the 51% can vote to take away the life, liberty, or property of the 49%. That's what a democracy is. Democracy is never used. It's a term that's never used in the Constitution. Nowhere. It's a republic. But when you hear these gurus, they don't talk about that.
I never do.
And then the social commentators never, and this includes the guy who's sponsoring, call for an uprising. What's he calling for an uprising for? That when he isn't even exposing that they are operating as a corporation. I mean, corporation doesn't even exist, but they use it as smoke and mirrors to hide behind, to say, well, we can do it because we're corporate. No, you can't use a word and say, I'll just say abracadabra, presto changeo, and that means I can do anything I want to. No, it doesn't work that way. But they will hide the fact that the magic word is corporation. They don't want to get anywhere near that. And that goes for Reinhard Fulmich, Mr. Nuremberg 2 to you. And he also won't talk about how Nuremberg 1 was a hoax. There's a guy by the name of Kevin Annett who has internationalist solutions. We just need a world court, right? A world court and with enforcement powers. Doesn't that sound good?
It sounds like United Nations stuff, huh?
Mm-hmm. But he says he's using common law. Yeah. No, he's not. Common law is a local thing. It always has been. Then there are others. There's a fellow by the name of Christopher James operating in Canada. He's got a program called a Warrior Calls, and some of the things he says sounds kind of good. But then, he also talks about working with Anna von Rice and David Straight, and he's a big favorite with the truckers, the ones that ran up to Canada and blew their horn until they got arrested with no plan. Yeah. So, anyway, those are things that you can look at, and then keep your eye on what does work and not on the distractions of ain't it awful, and ignoring the fact that they're corporate. Now, there's some other stuff I was going to bring up to you to look at. We don't fill out their forms. We don't file, even when they threaten us. We'll arrest you. We'll do bad things to you if you don't come into our tribunals, our dens of iniquity. You have to. Well, anytime you're telling yourself, I have to, you have to take the, you know what? You have to come to our court. You have to pay us. You have to pay. You have to stop working on your building if we say so. You have to. Oftentimes you'll find you don't really have to. So don't let, some corporate agent tell you that you have to until you've really thought it through to what the solution may be. If you're thinking about following somebody, does the one that you want to follow empower you, or just want to impose a top-down theory that you will be a pawn in? And again, I'll emphasize decentralize everything, and that means your economy. If you can do the job that you do and provide the service you do, and you can do it with a small small mom and pop operation, or create your own mom and pop operation, you will be doing much better ultimately than you would ever do climbing the corporate ladder. That's a recipe for disaster. It's a recipe for selling your soul, where.
All right.
If you're thinking about following somebody who's got the grandiose thinking, which can be particularly annoying when he or she has nothing to be grandiose about, are they bragging about how miserable that they can make the enemy? And that people run. When they see me, they run. Yeah, so you say. I would still want to look at what specifically are you doing, and does it make sense? Is it godly? Is it, does it grant the enemy even due process? Are we behaving in a godly manner? Even though they don't grant us reasonable notice and meaningful notice and a reasonable opportunity to respond, we do that for them because we're godly.
Exactly.
And because when we do that, what we do can never be attacked. We may not always get it right, but at least our process can be godly. If the people you're thinking about following refuse to listen to a solution because it might mean they'd have to change something that they don't want to change, I would be skeptical, including stop being incorporated. I ran into, with the Roger Hilligus process, an entity calling itself, I think it called itself basically common law RS or something like that, PMA. Now, there's nothing wrong with having a PMA, private membership association, if you know what you're doing and why you're doing it. If it's a common law private membership association, it can be very useful. Do you want to form a court that operates as a private membership association? Think about it. How could a court be a private membership association? Courts have a different function. They're for the public. You want to be open about everything. You don't want to hide behind a private membership association.
Right. I never heard of
Any
that.
more than you would want to hide behind being incorporated like they do.
Huh.
So this is extracting yourself from the system is more difficult than just signing a few status documents, like saying, like rescinding your voter registration, repudiating the presumption that you're a corporate United States citizen slave, like rebutting the presumptions of the birth documents that created the all capital name that they traffic you with. Those are important and necessary, but they're not necessarily sufficient. You're also going to have to follow up. I mean, you don't have to, but you're going to do better if you follow up extracting yourself from the system, if you extract yourself in every way reasonably available to you. And that's going to change over time. As you get more free, you're going to see other ways that are then opening up to becoming free. It's like breaking an addiction. You're going to go through withdrawal symptoms. And you're going to have a lot of hard work to do to create your own wealth instead of thinking that you're tapping into some corporate wealth. It's hard work to create your own wealth and that isn't exploiting someone else.
Right.
And you have to break your addiction to greed. So you have to decide for yourself, what do I really need to live a meaningful, godly life? And it probably doesn't mean, all kinds of wealth and ostentatious consumption. And related to our addiction to greed and entertaining ourselves is it's a cousin, convenience. Yeah, it's not convenient to be self-employed. I'll tell you that. It is not. It would be much easier to punch a time clock until it's not easier, until they make your life miserable. And then you'll wish that you had done the hard work of being self-employed.
A while ago.
Stop making it so hard. Part of the ways we make extracting ourselves from the system and getting a modicum of freedom is that we deal in abstractions, like corporations, like just like agreeing to be, non-specific speech. Like, we went to Iraq, we went to Afghanistan. Did you go? I didn't go. If you didn't go, if you weren't part of the policy of doing that, then you didn't go. Now, some people you knew may have gone, and who told them to go? Did they go voluntarily, or did they think that they were over a barrel in some way that maybe they actually weren't over a barrel on? I think we have to really reconsider, and we've discussed this in previous broadcasts about the military. We have to really look at what is warfare but mass murder. We really want to participate in it and dignify it and invest in it. In business, are you making money by cheating people or by helping others to cheat people? Well, if you're working for a corporation, you probably are. If you're working for a big corporation that trades on Wall Street, you're surely committing frauds against lots of people you'll never know. But the chickens do have a way of coming home to roost, and there is a growing resentment of those who've been exploited by all that investing on Wall Street. Another addictive gambling operation, another get-rich-quick scheme. Okay, and then I'll get through this here in a minute. Do those that you're thinking about following, do they imply that the road to truth, and I've had this told to me, the road to truth, sometimes we have to pave that road with lies, because the American people just are stupid, and they won't understand what you and I understand. So we have to tell them, a few little white lies here and there.
That's not us saying it. That's not us saying that.
No. But I have had people tell me that.
Yeah, for anybody that's just coming on.
Yeah, they're not ready for the truth. We have to tell them. We have to shade it a little bit. We have to sugarcoat it a little bit because they're not ready for the truth. Same deal with the health professionals. Do we achieve health by the selective administration of poison? Do godly deeds require approval or permission from Satan or his minions? If we want to be free, if we want to be in charge of ourselves, which is what sovereignty means, that we're free to do whatever we wish as long as we harm no one else, then do we need permission from some corporate tribunal calling itself a court? Some people have been duped into thinking that they need that. They don't. And then I think this is about the last one. Don't buy into the lies. Stop being so manipulatable. Don't be so gullible and easy to manipulate. Don't fall for the disparaging slogan terms like conspiracy theorist or sovereign citizen. These are just mindless chants. Do they really matter? Do the opinions of the ones who parrot this stuff really matter to you when you know that they're lies? Okay. Now, did you want to add anything, Luciana? I just wanted to make sure I got through everything. Just kind of a checklist for people to think about as they decide where they want to go, who they want to listen to, and the questions that they want to ask themselves to think critically.
Yeah. I don't know how much more it's going to take. They can continue looking all over the place for justice, but you're not going to find it in their so-called courts. That's for sure. It's going to be very rare, very, very rare, and very, very sad. It's been very sad to watch so many people suffer so many years and years trying to get justice, spending so much money with their attorneys and with these courts, and to end up losing their home, losing everything, and have nothing, and then have their case dismissed and no justice, and not have returned what was taken from you unlawfully. This is RICO at its best, these courts. I'm sorry, but it is. Talk about organized crime.
Organized and synchronized.
Yep. With many, many members.
Sometimes they say that, the pain of changing, and it is painful to change, it has to get to the point where it's less painful to change than it is to continue as you are.
Well,
And that's what they tell people in 12-step programs. You have to hit rock bottom, but those programs try and lift what that bottom is, and so that you don't have to lose every single thing you have before you change your way of living and discover that freedom is still possible. I wanted to draw attention to a comment, or I guess the private chat is going to disappear, but one of our members has decided to defy the experts, which is often a good idea. And he has a mom who's aging, and he has been getting her to accompany him on long walks, and she is getting lots of exercise, and her health is improving. He's tapering her way down on the pharmaceutical products that have been killing her.
Yeah.
And I think he sees the physical changes. He thinks that her mental functioning is not really much improved. But Luciana and I have
I
seen
think
it.
I've seen it. I spoke to her. I think it was Sunday, so just a few days. I happened to call him, and his mother answered, and it was a pleasure speaking with her. She asked how I was and how I was doing. She told me how she was feeling and that she was going to get some rest, and she seemed to be doing just great. Thank God that she has a son like Keith who has taken on caring for her, at home, because we all know that if she was so many people at that age, they'll assign the courts, these so-called courts, think they have a right to take these people from us and say, oh, they might get hurt with you. They need special care. We're assigning a guardian to look over their affairs, and they're going to be put in a nursing home, and they need this medication, that medication, this medication. You don't know how to do this. We need someone who knows how to prescribe medication, and we need to monitor them 24. Oh my gosh. And they take the elderly from us and end up killing them after taking everything they own, to pay themselves for killing them. They pay themselves, they take their homes, everything. It's insane what's happening. And this is what started the Roger Hilligus case,
Right.
him taking his mother, and it's just.
And I think that she could have been another success story like Keith's mom is.
Right.
I think Keith doesn't see the dramatic change in mental functioning because he's with her every day.
He's with her every day, and it's happening so gradually. But we don't get the pleasure of speaking to his mother all the time, and then not speaking to her, and then speaking to her later, 3 months later. It's like, wow.
Yeah, we remember wow. When all she was able to do was scream in anguish. That's all she was able to do. And now, I mean, it's like night and day.
Holding conversations on the phone. It's beautiful. Yes. Beautiful. Right. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
God bless you, Keith, for what you're doing, and God bless your mother. What a sweet, sweet soul.
Okay. Well, thanks to everyone for listening, and the ones who are going to listen, and use your God-given discernment in assessing where you want to take your life, in accordance with God's plan for your life.
Exactly. Exactly. And get off that fence and decide which side of the table you want to sit on, because you can't sit on both.
No.
You got to make a choice.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, we hope to be broadcasting again next week, Thursday night at 9. And
Thursday at 9.
Let us know if you have topics that you would like to see addressed, and we'll try and address them.
Exactly. It was nice seeing you, Catherine.
Good to see you too, Luciana.
All
Good
right.
night, everybody.
Good night, and God bless you all.